Oh, okay. I'm like, what the heck? I'm like, okay, welcome back to another video. So this is the Southern Hellenist, and I hope you guys will enjoy this lovely live stream and everything. And I kind of, the title of it is American Gods and Devotional Polytheism. And I accidentally was trying to stream this on my Segment Raw channel. I like doing channels that for educational purposes because there really isn't a lot of. I'm not saying there isn't a lot of polytheists on YouTube. It's just mainly the people that are on it are people who practice Wicca, Christianity, and atheism. So our job as polytheists is to get that information out there for the masses to consume. So you guys probably did not see this yesterday. My prince from France arrived, and I want to show these are Egyptian prints. Um, I bought a couple of them just to get a taste of her artwork. I know people say, well, if you want a taste, you just should have just gotten one, but I decided to get three. It was last month, so don't shoot me too much. Um, but I kind of want to use it as a segue into what I'm going to talk about, which is deals with American gods and the rise of devotional polytheism, which was just interesting. Okay, so this is what they gave. This is what she gave me. This is the goddess Nike. I actually had to go in her shop to find out that this was actually the goddess Nike. So, uh, here's your close up, baby. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, that is so, so beautiful. And this is her business card. This is actually the goddess Ma'at, but I do not know if this is just her only business card that she has. But she's out of France. And so this is the goddess Nut. Really nice. I'm doing show and tell today. This is the goddess Messenger. And this is the god Ma'az. Very nice. I like these. I do plan to buy some more. But she has them in from three different pantheons. She has two of them are from the Nordic, which is the goddess Sol and the goddess Hel, and but her vast majority of her paintings are for the Greeks and the Egyptian. So I'm really looking forward to any future prints that she happens to make available. So segueing into that, I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that because I actually plan to put them up. So, um, all right. So in 2001, Neil Gaiman introduced us to the story American Gods. Um, Hold on one second. I gotta get something to drink. So this is going to pause for a bit. So pardon me. All right. So pardon me. I had to get something to drink. I know I'm drinking. Pardon me. I'm just going up the camera a bit. All right, so sorry about that. So we were introduced to the book American Gods in 2001. And um, and so it was basically the concept of this book. If you guys have not read the book or seen the show, then you'll know what I'm talking about. So Neil Gaiman is a immigrant from, I believe, England, and he wrote a book, and he had actually gone to, I believe it was Norway, and um, he saw this reproduction of this Norse or this Viking Age village. And so what ended up happening was he ended up um, taking his experience when he visited Norway, and he actually wrote the book American Gods. And the idea was, the concept was that um, it didn't matter if you were a conqueror, an explorer, or a slave, or an immigrant. You literally brought your gods with you. And it is a story of belief, and what happens when old belief is battling against new belief. So basically, the gods of the old empires, the old civilizations that people built temples to, people had sacrificed millions of animals, it seems, burned millions of pounds of incense, poured out millions of gallons of liquid. Um, Gods that had shaped and had fallen with these empires. These gods are battling against the new gods, like of the internet and of credit cards and of highways. There's even a god of like, I think it was god of highways. It was also a god of houses. So I don't know. I think I heard someone say that. But they're battling against these new gods. They have millions and millions of followers. And there was one. I have actually there was actually a really interesting episode of American Gods from the first season. I actually do have the first season of American Gods, and it's Jesus, which is weird. But he's classified as an old god because he's over 2,000 years old. He's an old god. And he was in Mexico, and he was with these people that were trying to reach America for, new life, the story of humanity. And people shot him. And, he was, walking on water. I mean, the faith of these people in Jesus was really strong. But he's classified as an old god. And it was sad because, and it kind of also kind of reiterates someone saying years ago that if Jesus came with immigrants, he gets shot. And apparently the writers thought of the same thing and incorporated that into a very, very sad scene. So that, as I was saying, it came out in 2001, and it was a hit. And they had given him what is known as what I'll call it as a prototype cover, and it ended up being the cover that actually went into the book, and then it was re-released as anniversary edition, and I do happen to have the anniversary edition. I bought it like I think like 3 years ago, and I haven't gotten halfway through it. Um, so, anyways, so these gods are battling against the new gods of of the world and of the internet and all that. So, okay, so it says here, I'm going to read this entirely to you. So, this is from a website called allergicpagan.com. So, I give Halstead credit for what I'm about to read. And if you guys want to comment on, if you guys have read American Gods, please let me know in the little chat section. I really appreciate it. And we can discuss the book. I have until 3 when we'll be here, but the video should not be a couple hours long. So, all right. So I'll read this. American Gods is a novel about Neil Gaiman. The premises of American Gods is that the people who came to the American continent, including conquerors, slaves, and immigrants, brought with them their gods, literally. The gods now walk around disguised as human beings, but the old gods have weakened as belief in them disappeared, and they now battle with the new gods, gods of the internet and of credit cards and superhighways. The publication of American Gods in 2001 coincided with the rapid growth of interest in deity-centered paganism, or what came to be called devotional polytheism. So devotional polytheism is basically paganism that focuses more on the gods and less on what made paganism popular again. The idea of doing magic and being involved in the occult and everything like that. There's even actually an article that came out on Papios about, yeah, you can be a pagan without the magic, but why would you not want to do the magic? Maybe that's not what people are looking for. One of the basic premises of devotional polytheism, the gods are real, and so polytheistic rituals should be reflective of that. Even in branches of polytheism like Celtic polytheism and Norse polytheism, there is that emphasis on devotional work. American Gods was significant for the emerging polytheistic movement because it was a realistic and contemporary account of the gods of the ancient polytheistic cults. Polytheism isn't new, of course. People have worshipped gods for millennia, but the recent growth of devotional polytheism under the pagan umbrella is new. Prior to the turn of the 21st century, the gods of contemporary paganism were most often understood as either jargon archetypes or aspects of a single god or goddess pair. But sometime after 2001, that started to change, and more pagans began talking about the importance of belief in literal and distinct gods. So American Gods, in my own personal opinion, had a huge effect on this mindset. Because here you had an author that wasn't a polytheist, that was talking about the gods as being these real beings. And because devotional work had stopped, because belief in these deities had stopped, they were getting weaker. There were practicing pagans, I cannot talk on it now. There were pagans practicing devotional polytheism prior to 2001. For example, I cannot pronounce it, has documented in her book Witching Culture from 2004 that Dana Paxson was experimenting with the intersection of Valdun and heathenry in the 1990s. No doubt there were others doing similar work, but they were the pioneers. Interest in devotional forms of polytheism increased exponentially sometime in 2001, after 2001. The earliest example I found in print to what may be now regarded as devotional polytheism is Janet Farrier and Gravett Bone's book, Progressive Witchcraft, which was published in 2003 and includes a chapter on deity-centered witchcraft. Janet Farrier was the author was significant because she and her late husband Stuart were possibly more than anyone else responsible for the popularization of the jargon concept of gods in the 1980s with their publication of The Witch's Way, 1984, The Witch's Goddess, 1987, and The Witch's God, 1989. The delusion delusion. I cannot pronounce it. I'm going to give up. The understanding of why devotional polytheism appeared when it did is necessary to give a little historical background. In the 1990s, access to the World Wide Web grew exponentially. Like, it just exploded. Which led to the unparalleled spread of information about paganism, both ancient and contemporary. This rapid increase in the availability of information on paganism drove the growth of non-traditional, eclectic, and solitary paganism. As a result, paganism experienced a dilution, which is the inevitable result of the popularization of any movement. The number of pagans who had not had an initiatory experience swelled in proportion to the number who had. Exoteric forms of paganism began to be emphasized over the historic. I cannot pronounce these names. And paganism increasingly became understood as a form of self-expression rather than the form of self-transformation. In addition, a commercialistic attitude towards the gods developed. The idea that we create the gods in our own image came to be an empowering one, but the downside of this was a trivialization of the divine, what David Riff. Okay, David, if you ever do watch this video, I'm sorry if I butchered your last name. Called designer gods and other labeled plug-and-play polytheism. In the long run, these consciously constructed gods left many pagans with the empty feeling of staring at themselves in the mirror. Where was the transition of self? Where was the connection to the divine other? Where was the ecstasy, a word which means to stand outside oneself? All of this was coming to a head around the turn of the millennium. In addition to general millennium, I guess Americans were traumatized by the events of 9/11. The turn towards more literalistic form of religion can be understood as a response to the anxiety caused by this collective tragedy, born of a desire for an increased sense of stability and meaning and dissatisfaction with more relativistic forms of religion. These events also coincided with the anti-fluffy movement in paganism. In 2001, the term fluffy, later fluff bunny, was popularized by the author of the internet essay Why Wiccans Suck. The essay was little more than a personal rant against the non-traditionalism and eclecticism, but the term caught on and sparked a seemingly endless stream of anti-fluffy critiques of other people's paganism. Many of these critiques were soon echoed by devotional polytheism, who rallied against both archetypalism and the notion of all gods are one god and all goddesses are one goddess, aspect monism. It is in this historical context that American gods made its way into the pagan consciousness in 2001. A lot of what could be written about the relationship between Gaiman's portrayal of the gods and contemporary polytheistic belief, but one scene in the book in particular stands out. It is a counter between the god Odin, disguised as a human being known as Wednesday, and a waitress who's a feminist goddess worshiper. And I'll read this. This is from Neil Gaiman's book. Once again, I gotta drink something because this is a very long article. Pardon me. Now, there's one word in there I cannot pronounce, so please pardon me. I'm a pagan, the woman behind the counter said. Really? Said Wednesday. And tell me, as a pagan, who do you worship? Worship? Now she's confused here. What do you mean by worship? That's right. I imagine you must have a pretty wide open field. So to whom do you set up your household altar? To whom do you bow down? To whom do you pray at dawn and dusk? This is really interesting. He's talking about bowing down. So obviously he knows about people bowing down before these gods. Not saying, not making sense, not saying that, he had worshippers who bow down to him, but he knows about these other cultures and them having people that did bow down to the gods. To whom do you pray to at dawn and at dusk? The feminine principle, it's an empowering thing, you know. Indeed, and this feminine principle of yours, does she have a name? She's a goddess within us all. She doesn't need a name. Ah, said Wednesday with a wide monkey grin. So do you hold mighty bacchanals in her honor? Do you drink blood wine under the full moon while scarlet candles burn in silver candle holders? Do you step naked into the sea foam, chanting ecstatically to your nameless goddess while the waves lick at your legs, lap your rear thighs like the tongues of 1,000 leopards? You're making fun of me, she said. We don't do any of that stuff that you were saying. She took a deep breath. Shadow suspected she was kind of tan. Any more coffees here? They shook their heads, and the waitress turned to greet another customer. There, said Wednesday, is one who does not have the faith and will not have the fun. Pagan indeed. All right. So I really did enjoy that scene because, and that's a scene, I don't know if they included that or they're going to include that, but I'm pretty sure that's going to probably cause a lot of Wiccans and goddess worshippers to have steam come out of their ears. In the quote above, Gaiman contrasts a vague and metaphorical goddess feminism with the ecstatic and literal polytheism. What's really interesting about the scene is how Wednesday's dismissive attitude towards the goddess worshipper is reflected perfectly in the attitude of many devotional polytheists towards other forms of paganism today. I don't know how familiar Neil Gaiman was with contemporary paganism, but American Gods possibly reflected and probably magnified a dissatisfaction among many pagans with popular forms of paganism, and it offered one possible alternative: literal belief in the gods and devotional forms of worship. Popular paganism was failing to produce the kind, deep religious experience that many of the pagans crave, and devotional polytheism promised to answer that craving. Of course, not everyone who found popular paganism wanting becoming a hard polytheist. Some left paganism, some found other routes to transcendence or ecstasy under the pagan umbrella. Contemporary paganism offered many routes to the divine other, some of which that doesn't require belief in the literal gods. But nevertheless, devotional polytheism has become the most popular alternative for pagans today. The missing ingredient is ecstasy. It's important to understand the role that American Gods had in the rapid growth of devotional polytheism in the last 15 years. This is not just a historical curiosity. It teaches us a lesson about how the powers of our religions can be diminished when we lose sight of the importance of religious ecstasy and self-transitions. In his book, Behold the Spirit, a study of the necessity of mystical religion from 1948, Alan Watts diagnosed the decline of mainstream Protestantism just as that decline was beginning. According to Watts, Protestantism had lost the art of worship, which he describes as a kind of corporate self-forgetfulness, in other words, transitions or ecstasy. In its place, Protestantism offered only morality tinged with emotion. The soul, wrote Watts, desires relief from itself, the infusion of life and meaning through being possessed by a power greater than itself. That is what evangelical Pentecostalism offered, which filled the vacuum made by the mainline Protestant church. And I have been to Pentecostal services, and you actually can feel the energy in that building. When you walk in, you're hit with it. And you have a lot of anti-theists who make fun of the Pentecostal churches, but this is something that is historically connected with religion. Is the ecstasy. By the end of the 20th century, contemporary paganism was beginning to suffer from the same symptoms that mainline Protestantism was experiencing in the mid 20th century and still experiencing. Sorry. A general lackadaisical attitude and the kind of spiritual anemia. And just as evangelical Protestantism arose as a Pentecostalism rose as a response to the inadequacies of mainline Protestantism, so devotional polytheism arose in response to the inequities of popular paganism. The similarities are more than superficial. Both devotional polytheism and evangelical Christianity are religions which center on direct encounters with literal gods. Both have devotional styles of worship, and both promise to connect with their devotees to a power which is both personal and transcendent. If we want to understand the growth of devotional polytheism or the slow decline of popular paganism, we need look no further than Wednesday's criticism of the feminist goddess worshiper. A path to ecstasy for being okay. So this is more for the for people that are in godless paganism. Yeah. So, so when you read that, and I got involved in paganism, in popular paganism, when I was 12. My mother took me to a New Age shop, and I encountered paganism for the first time. But as time went on, I noticed, and it really, I hadn't heard the word fluff bunny or fluffy paganism when internet became available to the masses. And I still remember the old Yahoo message boards, and the people that were born prior to or after this date, you probably don't know about Yahoo messenger boards. These were a way for people to connect with other people. My mother used to go on there all the time to talk to police officers, which is funny in itself, because she went through the police academy down in Florida, and she was state certified out in Florida. And I had told her a couple years ago, hey, Mom, why don't you just transfer your certification and join the Louisville Police Department, or be a 911 operator, something where you're doing something other than sitting around. And I'm going to tell you something. Sitting around and doing absolutely nothing but being on the computer all day will kill you. Trust me on that. It will kill you. If you don't go out, or you don't feel like going out, it's going to kill you. So, little piece of advice. Go outside, enjoy the sunshine, and don't stay inside all the time, because you're going to end up dead. When 2001 came around and American Gods was released, as I said, I had to wait until everybody had pawed over it before I was finally able to get my hands on it. I have not gotten around to actually reading Anansi Boys, but I do plan to pick that book up next year. But yeah, so you have the rise of devotional polytheism, and I totally understand where this came from. You have the people who practice heathenism, that are doing major devotional work. You have people that are practicing Hellenism, and no, I'm not talking about Oh man, I gotta get a back scratcher, people. I do. I'm not talking about the people that are practicing what is known as uh, what we call folkish Hellenism, but we're talking about Hellenists that are doing devotional work, Hellenists that are abandoning. Sorry about that, guys. People that are abandoning popular forms of paganism and going and doing devotional work and coming together to worship their gods and everything. But it's, I think that as the dissatisfaction grows and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you're going to have popular forms of paganism start going down and down and down until you might have an entire community filled with people that happen to be devotional polytheists. Um, but I think popular paganism, and this is my own personal opinion, I think popular paganism really grew, really exploded when the hippie movement came because they were moving away from their parents' religion, which they later on embraced, and they were looking for something that was new and fresh and was not mainstream because they were anti-establishment. I mean, my mother told me because she was born in like 1955. She was she was a baby boomer. She was the children that came out after the Second World War. Um, and then of course later on down the road, she ended up ended up re-embracing the same type of religious figure that her mother had. But devotional polytheism, I definitely do um, believe really got a shot in the arm with American gods, and it's one of those things. But yeah, but um, it's oh, it's Emanism. Helsted now practices Emanism. Yeah, it's John Halstead from 3 years ago. But yeah, so he practices Emanism, and he pours out libations to the earth, and I think Emanism is really interesting. But but yeah, it doesn't require belief in literal gods to be an Emanist. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to get on here, not only show you guys the prints because you guys deserve to see some beautiful artwork, but to kind of talk about that and why I think that I think that the continuing rise in popularity of devotional polytheism and the decline of popular paganism is going to be one of those things is everything goes back in a circle. It does. All right. So for people that have not managed to catch my live stream, I'm sorry about that. I know everybody's busy and stuff like that. I close tonight, and then I don't have to really set my alarm until Monday night when I come home and I have to be at work. I have so far the next 3 days off. That's me next Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Um, but yeah. Another thing. I am. I don't know if I'm going to. Probably not. Probably not. I was thinking. I was going to show you guys something. And it's like, No, it's not Hellenic or anything like that, so I'm not going to show it. But oh, by the way, I will, however, state on Etsy, if you're looking for wooden statues, they have a number of really great sellers. But piece of advice: if you are looking for a wooden, then make sure it says wood on it, because I'm noticing a lot of like, oh, they're handmade and they're not made of wood. So I'm really thinking about, as much as I love my breakable statues, I really do love them. I really am thinking about getting them in wooden. So I'll see how that goes. I'll probably do that gradually over the course of the next year. But yeah. So I will see you guys around, and until next time, may you be happy, healthy, most importantly, be safe, and held to the gods. Bye.